So I'm out in the garage here to do a little bit of work on the bug. Show you a couple things I did that you didn't get to see is yesterday at work I went to the scrap yard and picked up 2 pieces of scrap metal here. They're roughly 13 gauge, and I picked up a piece of aluminum for my front skid plate. At the scrap yard, I'm calling it a scrap yard, but I can buy my DOM and electroweld and chrome moly tubing there, but they also have a scrap yard in back where you can go rummage through, grab whatever you want at 50 cents a pound for steel and $2 a pound for aluminum. And you can dig through and see if they've got anything that you can work with. So I picked that up. This is what we're going to make the upper control arms out of. But the first thing that I need to do is make the template. So another thing I did yesterday is I lined up, I've got my my Heim bolted in place here with the square bung threaded onto it. I have this Heim installed. I tack welded on these brackets. I went over earlier with you how that was specifically set as far back as I could get it this way, that it will still clear the steering shaft when the bung is in the full droop position. So once I determine that, this one is tacked in place. Now the forward bung over here is held in place with the vise grips. It's roughly where I want it to go. However, I'm not going to tack this one in place until I actually have the upper control arm, just in case anything shifts this way or that way, any amount whatsoever. So right now that's just tacked in place. Now, I clamped a little piece of aluminum here. It goes from the lower control arm to the spindle, and what it's doing is it's holding the spindle 7 degrees, which is the same angle that my lower supports are welded at. This is going 7 degrees up from the plane of the chassis. So this is clamped in place at 7 degrees, which puts it in line with the lower control arm, and then it's propped this way to give me roughly 0 degrees or straight up and down right here. So that puts this upper Heim roughly where it needs to be, this way and this way. At least as much as it needs to for fabricating purposes. So once I had that, all 3 of those points, I put a square on everything and took a bunch of measurements. I had to get lengths, widths, and offsets. So once I got those, I transferred them here to a piece of paper. This is what I'm going to use to make the first cutout of the template. That's what I'm going to do right now. If I hold it up to the bungs, really hard to tell there, but looks like it hits everything it needs to. So that's just a very rough sketch. I don't have the shocks in place yet, so I think the next thing I'll do is put the shock in there. I did some cutting. I have a design that I think it looks pretty good. I think it's got strength where it needs it. It's got quite a bit coming through here. I might put some holes around here. I'll have to see how it feels when I cut it out. There's gonna be a lot of strength going through here. There's a lot of meat there. There's quite a bit of meat there. I mean, that's gonna be pretty solid, so I think I'm pretty happy with this. As of now, it seems to fit pretty good. I don't know how much I can cycle this without jacking it up. Or breaking my back. Okay guys, so I had to make a couple changes here. This is the original template that I was working on before. I made a modification here to clear the coil springs, and that was fine. I was okay with that. However, right around here, when the arm was coming into its highest point up, it was interfering with the chassis here. And I could have cut this back and done something, but at that point I felt like this design just wasn't optimal. So I've come up with this one, which is based off the original dimensions of this one. However, I kept it a little bit lower here in order to let me cut. You can see how this one just goes straight up. This one cuts down, over, and then back up. This gives me all the clearance and then some that I need to clear the chassis. So now it's Sunday morning. We're supposed to get some snow this morning, so I'm trying to hurry up a little bit. I got the sheet steel out in the driveway here, and I'm going to trace this out over here and plasma cut it out and clean it up, and then test fit it on the chassis again, make sure that everything clears. Okay guys, so yesterday we cut the pieces out. I checked them for fitment. They seem to fit really well. I took them out back. I put the grinder to them to clean up all the plasma cutting. I brought them into the sink, which is on the other side of the basement here. Scrubbed them up. Now what I've done is I've paired them up with the ones that are the most similar, which are these two. I've got two more sitting on the other side of the basement over here. This will be the set for the driver's side that I'm working on now. The pair on the passenger side, I don't have the parts for that side yet, and I don't want to weld them up without specifically testing them, so I'm going to continue with this pair. The other pair, I'm gonna do a little bit more work to, but for the most part I will stop on that until I can actually tack them together with the rest of the pieces in place to make sure that I don't need to make any changes to the arms. So what I'm doing now is I've punched these 3 holes where the square bungs are going to go. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can do a plug weld on them. So when I weld these bungs on here, rather than just weld them across here, and all the way around, there might be a tendency for it to be able to wobble with that. So I'm punching this hole in here so that as I'm welding this, I can also weld it in here, and I'll have that on the bottom as well, so I can weld it in there. That'll make it so that all my welds are not just going around it, they're around it and a little bit farther back where I can give it a little bit more strength from twisting. So that's what I'm doing now. So you can see on this one I've already measured out the holes, punched it. Now I'm going to do that on this one. Hey guys, so yesterday I did a boatload of TIG welding, and I TIG welded up this arm, top, bottom, whole thing. It's complete. This is the arm I made for the driver's side. Like I think I said earlier, I cut out all the pieces for the passenger side. However, since I don't have the passenger side spindle yet, I'm not going to tack weld or solid weld that one together yet, because before I do that, I need to install the spindle, hook it up to the lower control arm, and test fit one of these cutouts to make sure everything is exactly the same on the other side as it is on this side. So the other one was ready to go, but I need to get the spindle first. So with this one, I TIGged it all up yesterday. I used filler rod, of course, because you have to use filler rod on something like this for it to really be strong. Now I'm gonna grind it. I'm gonna clean it up with the grinder using the flapper wheel. However, I'm not gonna be grinding it to make all the welds look smooth. I don't wanna do that because I want this part to be really, really strong. So I don't wanna take any metal away. However, if you run your finger over it, there's bumps here and there, a couple of sharp edges. Really, that's all I'm using the flapper wheel for. I'm just gonna run it over quick, clean things up a little bit, take off any sharp edges, and that'll be it. One thing that I did do yesterday that I didn't get on video after I welded it, I did a test fit, and it worked. Everything fits, everything clears. So now I'm gonna clean it up. I'll show you a shot of it after I clean it up. See if you can see any close-ups on this. Like I said, I did TIG weld it. I TIG welded all of these parts at 110 amps. At 110 amps, I was using about 3/4 of the pedal. But when I got to the bungs, in order to TIG weld the bungs at the rosette welds and on the edges here, I cranked it up to 150 because these bungs are really thick compared to this metal, which is about 1/8 inch. And I really wanted to get in there and get some good penetration. So I did these parts at 150 amps, using about 3/4 to full pedal. And I did this at 110 amps at 3/4 to full with filler. Everything was done with filler. So I'm gonna go grind this and then show you what it looks like. Hey guys, it's Mike here, showing you the end product of my upper control arm. I think last that you saw me on the video, I said I was going to be doing some sanding on it, which I did. I took the flapper wheel on the grinder. See if I can get a close up there. I took the flapper wheel on the grinder, cleaned it up some. You can see I ran the flapper wheel over, but I wasn't looking to actually remove a lot of material from it. I was just looking to take off any of the rough edges, which I did. Another thing that I did is when I went to bolt it together or put the heims in there, I noticed that the threads were a little buggered on the bungs. I'm not sure if that was just from crud getting in there or if it was from all the heat. I've had this happen a couple times before on the round bungs. It's not a problem. I've got a 3/4 inch thread for that. So I just threw some oil in there, ran a tap through all three of the bungs, and everything's fine now. But just keep that in mind if you're doing a project like this and you order these bungs. Once you weld them in, there's a good chance that you're going to have to run the tap through there, so you might want to beforehand get yourself a tap. But anyways, here's the arm mounted. You can see that the clearances around the shock are good. There's no coil springs on here right now because I'm going to be cycling this up and down for the next project I'm doing, which is going to be the bump stops. But I did test it with the springs, and it clears in the full droop position and then the full up position. One point on that design, I had to take this back a little bit farther to clear the coil as it was coming down here. It clears now in full droop without any problems. And then if you remember on this part, my original drawing went straight across here, but that actually ended up running into the frame here. So on this second design, I cut it in so that it would clear the frame, And then because I was cutting it in this way, I added more material over here, or I didn't come as far out. Before I came 3 inches out this way, and on this second design I only came 2 inches, which gave me some good meat here for some strength. So let me put it in the full up position so that you can see how everything clears. You can tell in the shock here, it's all the way up. As a matter of fact, when I have the bump stops on here, it won't even go this high. It'll be about an inch down. However, you can see coming through here how it comes in, and it clears the frame right there, just barely. I mean, there's maybe 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, but that's enough, and this is as high as the arm will ever go. So, and then the back side here, can't tell now because I don't have the coil on here, but the back side right back here has just enough clearance to clear the coil spring. So I'm real happy with it. Haven't driven with it yet, but I really like the way it came out. It seems really strong, which is really what I'm looking for. When I told you before that I didn't have all the parts for the other side, but I've ordered those parts, so maybe sometime next week those will show up, and then I'll be able to weld up the other side, put the other side together. But for now I'm just building this side just so that I can design one side as I go. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.